Hey guys, Dante here and welcome back to my channel, The Book of Art, and welcome to another episode of the Toy Chest, where I show you toys that I've made in the past and toys I'm making now. So today I'm going to be continuing something I started a while back, and that is I want to make figurines of prominent YouTubers, or rather YouTuber characters and personalities. A while back I did a figurine based on Linkara's character, or rather based on Lewis Lovehog's character of 90s Kid. And I did it in a Rob Liefeld style. So I made a 90s Kid figurine if it was designed from the 90s. I will put the link of it, I guess, you know what, I'll put the link at the end of the video and you guys can check that out. The process of how I made it and of course, you know, the final product. With that being said, I've been wanting to continue this and make more YouTube-based individuals. But, you know, characters that really catch my attention. So, for today, our YouTuber in question is Jocat. And more importantly, his character, JoCrap, the man behind A Crap Guide to D&D, which looks somewhat like this. Now, this guy right here, short, stocky, snake-like head, but not a snake. Is, like I said, our main topic for today. So let's go ahead and show you what I have to work with. So before I show you the steps I'm getting into, per usual, I'm going to give you a timestamp right about here, guys. So jump to this timestamp if you want to skip my rambling of how it's made, and just go and see the final product of JoCrap's character. But for those of you who are still here, let's go ahead and talk about the parts I'm using. So this right here is the torso of your standard wrestling figurine, wrestling action figure, who usually stands about 5 to 6 inches. The idea I have is to scale it from the basic size upward and upward as you go up the body. As you notice, JoCrap over here is very stocky. He's very stocky. He's not just short, he's like thick. And it's really hard to find any kind of figurine that fits that unless you're looking for like dwarf characters from Lord of the Rings. But that's really hard. So I figure we're going to kind of skew that and capture the might of the character through scaling. So as I said, this is a wrestling figurine, the chest of one, in which 5 to 6 inches. These, plural, are the legs of a wrestling figurine that was like 7 inches. It was very weird. It was a hard plastic as opposed to the softer plastic, an entirely different type of figurine. And it was of this dude. This famous wrestler slash actor. You might recognize him. I believe he is indeed one of the famous characters from Guardians of the Galaxy. He plays Rocket Raccoon. There we go.
Nothing goes over my head. My reflexes are too fast.
So I decided to take the torso of this, which is slightly kind of large, and combine it with the legs of this guy. So what are we using? We are using wrestling figurines of, I believe it is the Ultimate Warrior. I don't know wrestling, so I'm just going by stuff I've seen on the internet. I believe it's the Ultimate Warrior, judging by the makeup. So we're going with these legs of the Ultimate Warrior because he already has a little poofy pants, which is perfect. We are going with the torso of not Groot over here. So we already have the scaling going up. We have legs that are kind of short, being scaled with, you see how short these legs are? Being scaled with a larger chest. And then to push that even further, we are going to be using these Hulk arms that I found, man, like a few years back. So someone very angrily, I guess, tore apart their little brother's toy, like just ripped it apart and tossed it into the street. And it was this Hulk. And there's a little bit of white and blue paint on this because I, at one point, primed it white and painted it blue because I was trying to make a, like, big, muscular, you know, Hulkish figurine of the Tick. And it never came out right. So these are our proportions of JoCrap. Like I said, not as stocky, but it kind of captures the scaling from smaller, larger, and he's going to just get bigger and bigger with the big head. The head, I'm not sure what we're going to do about that. But right now, I want to show you the body. So this is what we're working with. And the issue is a number of things. One, because this was broken, I had to like remake, I guess you call it, the anchors of the shoulders. So I remade it. Basically just put a screw in there very carefully, not to poke too far. Gave it a washer, and that washer will fit, or at least it should. There we go. Right in there. So it fits inside the chest pretty well with a little bit of sanding. I will be sanding back the arms here, kind of widen it to give the shoulders enough movement. Speaking of which, I gotta just crack this a little bit. There's a little bit of glue to really help these nails stay in place. There we go. So I've managed to sink these in just far enough to keep the movement. So, main issue is this. These are all different materials. This is a type of soft plastic. It's like a rubbery plastic. And this was a hard plastic. So many people know about what they call cracking the bodies. So what you do is you take a heating device, a hair dryer, or in my case an actual heat gun, and you heat the body. Then you stick a screwdriver or something flat really into there to wedge it apart. And when it splits, when the anchors that are holding it inside split, it cracks. It's called cracking the body. So that's what you could do with these. And I had to really kind of force it to get the legs off. You couldn't do that with this. This guy is a hard plastic, so I actually had to like cut and damage all of this, which is going to be sculpted over. And I had to like really tear it apart to get in there. So I did some damaging to it, but with some sculpture, it should be fine. But nothing matches, because like the Ultimate Warrior, or whoever he is, has this weird like flare at the neck, the base of the neck of the waist, and the flare is too big to fit in the hole of this guy's tum-tum. So yeah, a lot of this is going to be me adding clay or pieces of plastic and glue to compensate for the different sizing between everything. And that right there is what's going to be the start of this figurine. Once I do a few details, such as maybe adding an extra layer of plastic, because it sits like that. And I don't want to make the hole bigger, because then it won't keep this. Like this little washer-like piece will just slide out if the hole's too big. So yeah, I'm going to have to just do a lot of sculpting and resizing and just trying to figure out the best way for all of this to hold together as neatly, as cleanly as possible. There's a lot of give. There's a lot of give in this. So yeah. Now that all that rambling is done for the intro, I'm just gonna go ahead, add some pieces, show you where we stand, and then we'll tackle the next step, which will probably be maybe some light sculpting to get JoCrap's detailing, because I don't just want to paint it. I want to actually make it look like he has fabric on him. You know, the funny pants he wears with the butt chaps. I'm assuming he has chaps. I need to find reference for the butt, but yeah. So no more rambling. Let's jump into sculpting. Alright guys, so we have right here some basic plastic styrene sheets glued down and some epoxy clay to make this kind of mushroom top that will now fit neatly into the different tum-tum, the different lower torso, the abdomen of the other figurine. I've also added some epoxy clay on the arms for a better snug fit. And once again, using more plastic styrene sheets and epoxy clay, I've done a mirror image of this piece of plastic, which is what braces the shoulder connection inside the torso. And also gave it like a bit of epoxy clay on both sides to kind of really reinforce that plastic. So all of the internal mechanisms should now fit nice and neat. We're going to let this sit for another 24 hours. Do some sanding to make sure everything fits, like I said, nice and snug. And then from there, it's really just a matter of figuring out if how much of this I'm going to assemble and how much I'm going to actually pre-paint. I think I could do the sculpting on the legs individually. I could do base sculpting on the arms individually, but the torso will have to be assembled before I do the sculpting on that, and then we move on forward. Okay, folks, with some sculpting done and a day of drying and then sanding, here are the pieces, or some of the pieces, with the sculpture work already put into it. Now, I like to call this the superhero approach. You notice in comic book superheroes, like, their costumes kind of wrap around every contour, every muscle. If you're a woman, it wraps around every curve. And the only way you know they're wearing a costume is A, because of the coloring, and B, because there's lines at the wrist and stuff. And that's pretty much what I've done here. So, for example, JoCrap's left arm is one long sleeve. And with that long sleeve, what I do is I take a little bit of clay, roll it into a thin line, and lay it out on the edge. So one edge I keep sharp, flat if you would, and the other edge I just really neatly blend into the mold. So this is one way of sculpting I do to keep all the muscular detail as if the character's wearing like skin tight clothes, as opposed to sculpting an entire outfit over them. So this is pretty much a skin tight sleeve with the wrist, the actual cuff. Same thing in reverse for his fingerless glove. And then more or less same thing with the edging of a band he had. I thought about painting the band directly on, but I want to give it some, some texture. So he does have this wristband, I guess not wrist, bicep band that then matches the curves. Pants, same thing. Edging of his kind of cowboy pants. I don't know what you call them. Chapless? No, assless chaps. There you go. So we have a curve here, and then it bleeds into the muscle. And then I have it bleed up to the top because I cannot put any sculpting work here because it'll just rub against. So it will rub against the inner working of the crotch area. So this can be paint that then goes into a three-dimensional form. You have the little lines in the bottom. I gotta add the loops for these ropes. I'm keeping the harsh edging on both sides. More like this is like a leather strapping that he has in his chest piece. And that's what I've got so far, because I don't want to do the back end until everything's glued together and I can match it all together. So for now, this is our completed sculpt. Oh, and I also added, I widened the belt. So the difference between the waist diameter and the lower waist diameter is matched up nicely. That's sort of sculpting. But now comes the interesting part. His head. Right, so JoCrap has, the whole idea is that he wears this fabric cloth puppet head. And I went through several ideas. One idea was like, maybe I should just make the head out of plastic. Just have a solid sculpted head to match the solid plastic of the body. I'm not really big on fabric with figurines, even when I buy them for myself. And you notice most fabric on figurines now, the fabric is actually rubber, not actual fabric. But I decided to have some fun, and we are actually going to make this kind of puppet sock head. So here we go. This is the smallest little puppet I've ever made in my life. It is not a perfect, I don't think it's not really perfect to the shape of his head. His head is like really hard to like, it's not quite a sock. It's not quite a sock puppet like Kermit the Frog. He has a wideness to his head, like a rounded, almost like an egg wideness, like the fat end of an egg. So I try to get that kind of like fatness. It's not perfect. I'll hopefully work on it as I go along. So this is just blue felt. The good thing about felt, I can stretch it and twist it and really work with it. This is going to be what they call the palette, what you put in there. And I'm going to have a wireframe on the back of the palette, which wires all the way through, so the head is going to have a complete bendable neck. Now the thing is, when you do puppets, you're supposed to line the inside with a thin layer of like sulfur foam to give it its shape. But sulfur foam at its thinnest is like a 1/4 inch, if you could find that. Usually it's a 1/2 inch, to be honest. And that's too thick for this. So rather than try and line it with foam, once I glue the mouth in place on the very edge, I'll then just stuff it with like pillow stuffing, like get it really filled out. Then I'll add some details. I'll add the frills he has, the eyeballs, and this whole light blue is actually going to be colored to the darker blue. And I'm also going to use a different material for his underbelly. So I got this mesh bag. It's actually the perfect kind of whitish beige that he does have on his underbelly and his underjaw. And I figured it'd be really cool to use this mesh bag because I don't know if you can see it on camera. I think you can. Because it's mesh, it has like a scaly texture to it. And I think that'd be really cool. Just the felt with a scaly texture for the underpiece and the jaw here. So I'm going to actually overlay that on top of this just to give it a bit more structure. And like I said, I'm going to pull and twist and try and get this head to be as kind of egg shape as possible. He has a bit of a chin, which the actual character doesn't. The actual character has like it's more like a sock. But yeah, that's something I'll work on as I go along. Yes, I'm just going to start assembling. I'm going to actually color this first. No, you know what? No. We're going to assemble this to give me a frame. That might use some airbrush. And airbrush the nice blue colors. And then I'll add extra layers for all the frilling and the texture. And then, buttons and whatnot. And at that point, we could either... At that point, I think I'll start assembling the body. Excuse me. I'll assemble the body, spray paint it, prime it, and then prepare to assemble attach the head to it, because that's gonna be the trick. I don't want to attach this and get paint on this while painting the rest of the body. Small steps, but it's small steps with like different materials, which is the biggest problem. Let's continue, shall we? Wait. Okay, quick change of plans. So I made this little sock puppet, right? Sock-esque puppet. Like I said, it has the mouth. But I just don't like the shape. Like, I would love to have this figurine have a posable mouth. I can open and close. But I think the real focus should be the shape of the head. And this is not cutting it. And since in many of his videos, JoCrap doesn't actually open his mouth to talk. He just opens it to be expressive. So we're going to say goodbye to that. And I started stitching a brand new one and using a slightly altered pattern of this. Using this to get the general shape. I made this. Yeah, so I found this. It's a little water bottle from a water gun. I put tape all around it. Used some marker to kind of lay out a basic stencil. Cut it off. Cut the tape off. So I had a tape made stencil. And I stitched this together. And my goodness, it looks a lot more like JoCrap's general shape. And I had to hand stitch it, which is why the stitching is not the tightest. It's really exposed, kind of crooked, because it's too small for the machine. But I kind of like that. I kind of like the exposed stitching. And when I spray paint it or airbrush it, the color's going to come together nicely. So I fed an aluminum wire. Gave it a very light glue on the inside, 'cause I didn't want to wrinkle the fabric too much. And stuffed it with some pillow stuffing, like I mentioned earlier. Topped it off with a piece of cardboard and some glue gun. And we have our general shape. It does a moderate amount of bending, so it works well. And right now, I am once again hand stitching the mesh fabric using the bottom portion of the pattern, which gives it this nice curve. And that's going to be probably glued or maybe a very light stitching to the bottom of the neck. Bottom of the jaw and the neck to hide the slight wrinkle from where I tipped off some glue from the aluminum. So I'll add this. Then I'll add a secondary frill on top. A secondary kind of cowl with a frill, and then all the fine details. Yep, so I'm just slowly, very delicately hand stitching. I'm trying to be really tight with the stitches on this, 'cause I don't really want them to be as exposed on the main body. And yeah, we're gonna go forward, because sometimes you just have to cut your losses. And this is cute and all, and I could probably even turn it into a puppet if I could find a small enough mechanism to make it go meh meh meh. But in the meantime, we're gonna go with this this puppet head. As my friend T.R.I.X mentioned, it kind of has the Oscar the Grouch pet worm shape to it, and I like that. It's just a shame that JoCrap's head is slightly phallic, but you work with what you got. Let's keep going. When you can't find the fabric color you need, just paint it. So, with the majority of the figure primed, with the exception of the chest, because it needs to be assembled, and with our newly created head airbrushed, and with a second layer of cloth added, so we now have that nice blue and beige-ish tone, with that kind of scaly spotted pattern glued right on. So I basically sewed the top of this over it. I glued all of this on with some basic spray glue. Now, using a basic stencil, I'm gonna cut out from this other airbrushed piece of cloth the overlay, which will allow his frills to stick out. So I'm gonna cut 2 of these, sew it down the middle, kind of how I did this, how I sewed it down the middle. Then I'm actually just gonna glue these on, and these gonna overlap the stitching seams and still give us a nice little frill. And then I'll use the non-spray painted light blue to, you know, give him those spots he has going down the side. And then I just gotta find some nice eyeballs. So the head is actually coming out very, very nice. I want to do all of this painted and done separately before I try and paint this, because I didn't want to mix any paints overlapping, because if these get painted over, if a color goes from one side to this, that's fine. If a color gets on the fabric that I don't want, that's a problem. So yeah, I'm just going to add some more details to the head. Probably I might just finish the entire head first, and then I'll start I'll use airbrush paint. I don't know if I'll actually airbrush it, but I'll probably use some airbrush paint, some acrylic on the body, and then I have to slowly start the assembling process, prime this, color that, as well as find a way to attach it at the same time. And yeah, this is coming out well, so let's keep going. Now, the one thing I've learned when doing customized anything is that when you're mixing epoxy clay, or any kind of epoxy glue, epoxy soft clay, whatever, you know, you only mix it in small amounts because you don't want to have a whole bunch of excess. But sometimes you end up with excess, and I decided to take the excess amount I had, and since one of the other things that Jocat is known for is his really cute goblin design and his goblin animations, so I decided to go ahead and sculpt this little goblin. It's nowhere near fine detail. It was just literally, I was like, oh, I have this extra clay. This epoxy is going to dry in about like 20 minutes. I better use it for something. And I decided to go ahead and just do a quick little general shape of his, you know, really simplified little goblin design with a little leg sticking out. And I'm right now just using basic airbrush paint to color it and the entire figurine. So I have the legs right now drying. It says airbrush paint. Nothing was airbrushed because, you know, I don't have the fine detailing skills to use an airbrush on such a small figurine. But the airbrush paint itself gives me enough. It's liquidy enough to get the fine details without gunking it up. And sometimes I will refer back to my old enamel paints for much wider stuff, bigger stuff that, you know, can take a beating once in a while. But small detail stuff like this, the airbrush paint works just fine. And now, after much anticipation, I present to you Jocat's little goblin dude. Yay! Well, actually, I'm just kidding. Well, partly anyway. This little guy is an accessory that will be going along with the main figurine. So let's get to the main figurine, and we'll come back to this little cutie in just a second. Video effect. Woo! Ta-da! Here we are, guys, with the completed JoCrap action figure. Look at those muscles. Look at that might. Look at that giant freaking head. Let's look at some of the details on this guy. So, with the exception of the head, the entire thing is made out of solid plastic. You know, wrestling bits. That soft plastic wrestling figurines like to use. But I did want to go for cloth on the head. And yeah, I did all the fine detailing with the exception of his stitching, which is actually painted in. I didn't want to mess up the stitching on the mouth, but we do have some heavy stitching in the eyes, which are glued on. All of this head was hand sewn together and glued together. And to get that shape, to get that wonderful frill was such a pain, but it was worth it. With a wire inside, he can look up, he could look down, he could tilt his head and be kind of confused. So you get a nice range of movement. Not too much, but enough to bend around. And there is that textured mesh kind of cloth I use for the underneck. I wanted it to be different, and I wanted to kind of do some kind of cool detailing that's aside from just all felt. Everything else is felt material. All glued on, and as you saw in the video, if you watched the whole video, airbrushed. I had to airbrush and colors together. Now, to the body. The body is posable, but we are dealing with paint on top of a pre-existing figurine, which means some of the joints will scratch if you're not careful, but you still get some nice range of movement in the shoulders. The elbows bend nicely. Luckily, there's enough clearance where you don't lose any paint in the elbows. You have your waist swivel. You have your ab crunch, minimum. And you have a lot of movement in the legs. Because of all the detailing, the moment you begin to like pose and move hips and everything, it kind of breaks the mold, as they say. But you have the options. You have the options to put him in this little squat pose he tends to have. Just kind of like bend this all out. Let me see, stand him up. Barbarian rage! Woo! He is a bit top heavy though. But nothing a little, like I said, a little bit of extra posing won't hurt. Come on now. Make me look like a fool on national internet. I gotta utilize those calf tilting. There we go. Now that's JoCrap, if I say so. This was an extremely fun piece to do. A little stressful as well because he has like such like unique colors. In fact, I feel I actually went too dark on the pants. The pants are meant to be like this almost pure white, kind of baby blue. In contrast to the rest of the blue on his body, which is a darker tone. The annoying thing is his head casts such a shadow. It's kind of hard to see a good coloring on it. Come on, stand up for me. Stand up for me. There we go. But yeah, you got those big fists, and I was able to accomplish the upward growth, the upward chunkiness of the smaller legs, the bigger chest, the bigger arms, and the big head. The head is a bit big for my taste, but I think it still works. I think it still is JoCrap. The bad thing is there is like no reference online to how his back looks like, so I just had to guess, you know, the two shaded. I had no idea where the straps go. I just had to guess the entire back. I wasn't sure if like the chaps he wears only come down the front and expose the back. I just kind of went with it. And I have all the fine detailing. So you have the triangular pattern on his wrist, the stitching in the inner arm, the light brown of his shoulder pad, the wrap on the opposite side, the cut-off gloves, the extravagant boots with the brown wrapping on it as well, like the little brown lacing, and the zigzags. He has And so we get a good shot of this. Gotta get that crotch. He has the lacing in the crotch area, the mix mash straps with the additional strap on the side. Like, this guy is meant to like represent the zaniness that is Dungeons and Dragons. Just all the equipment you pick up in your journey, and you just go ahead and just keep adding and adding to like everything you have. And let's go back now. The little goblin friend. Good, nice. Don't know if that's I don't know if I could get the there we go, in focus. Very simple little goblin. A little brown tunic looking thing. And if you position him just right. Let me see. He has to lean on Joe's knuckles. Big massive man knuckles. There we go. Look at that. Ain't that freaking adorable? I mean, look at him. Look at him. Oh, it's so cute. But yes, I am, as you know what, let's expose. I don't care about the little background. Let's expose the sides right there. I am extremely happy that this is done. It's not 100%. There are a few places that I wish could hold together with the glue. But when you're mixing matching different size body parts, some things don't work. And the paint can scratch in some areas because it's paint on top of primer. But as a still image with a posable head, that, my friend, is JoCrap. And yeah, that's that. I'm going to be putting up some still images of this on my DeviantArt page and Instagram. So definitely tune into those. And it's just another YouTube icon in figurine form. So far we have Linkara's 90s Kid and we have JoCrap a la wrestling figurine. If you have ideas for other really interesting YouTube personalities or characters they play, let me know, because I actually want to make this a series. I want to just make a bunch of I want to take other people's mascots and make them into these cool figurines. So yeah, guys, give me a shout out. Put it down in the commentary below, on the side, on the left, or up, or whatever the heck YouTube puts it. Tell me ideas of what you think I should go next. Well, who and what should I try and design next as a figurine? And that'll be that then. So once again, guys, I am Dante. Like, favorite, share, subscribe, and all that good stuff. And I'll see you in the future. Later.
If you liked this video, be sure to check out my other works on my YouTube channel, and also be sure to follow me on these social media websites, linked in the description down below.